What is the most awkward accidental physical contact you've had with the opposite sex? Sitting in the dentist chair as a kid and having the hot assistant rest her boob on my forehead. Awkward but loved every minute of it. I accidentally sat on a man's hand on the train once. I was a teenager and wearing a mini sundress. And I sat down right on his hand without noticing it. It sounds improbable. But the chair was bucket shaped and his hand was in the dip. So I'm just sitting there, listening to my iPod on the train. And this guy taps me on the shoulder with his other hand and says, "I'm sorry but this is my stop." I was so embarrassed. And that's the story of the first time I got to second base. I was in the school bus. Then the bus stopped suddenly, which resulted in me falling and face planting my face in a girl's crotch. Rubbing my leg on the table's leg during math class. Turns out it was the leg of the girl sitting next to me. Girl tripped on a chair and her hand landed on my PP. As a reflex my hand swung up and hit her boob. In 7th grade my class was all standing in line and another kid suddenly grabbed my hand and forced it onto a girl's chest. Technically it wasn't an accident, but it sure was awkward. I used to work at a hospital. Orderly stuff. Late shift. Exhausted. I had been pushing patient beds around all day. Replacing my gloves often because dead people or snot kids and whatnot. I'm pushing a sleeper through a weird side wing of the ICU. A lone nurse takes over. Bends over patient. Starts tapping them or whatever nurses do with sleepers. I am pulling off my rubber gloves and say, "Do you need anything else?" Glove sorta sticks. Then snaps out and hits her ass. Hard. Up. Oh. She kinda turned and smiled. But I booked it out of there so I wouldn't be fired for sexual harassment. I was helping my friend clean his house. After scrubbing his nasty floors, I stood to rinse out the rag. He swooped in to give me one of those low hugs around the waist and say thanks so much. I turned at the worst possible minute and his face ended up in my tits. He got really freaked out, "I'm married," and proceeded to stammer out an apology. I just said "They're lovely, aren't they?" and laughed. It was awkward for him. But I've given birth. Nothing phases me anymore. Husband thought it was funny as hell. Elderly gent pressing his crotch against my knee on the bus. Edit. Thinking about it now I'm not sure it was accidental. It's the most awkward every time it happens. When I take the subway in the morning. I go to grab the handrail pole. And I end up accidentally holding someone else's hand. God almighty. Easy. My good buddy used to throw these pool parties for all of our friends back in the day. The pool was small so when about 10-15 people were in it, it was pretty cramped. I'm not sure why but my buddy's girlfriend was swimming towards me. While I backward doggy paddled, kind of kicking my feet while swimming backwards. Well as it turned out one of my kicks slid up her inner thigh. Slipped past her swimsuit bottoms and I towed her vagina. We locked eyes as if to make a mutual agreement never to mention this event to my buddy and I immediately left the pool. They are still dating today. And it's still awkward 8 years later. TL. Doctor, I towed a girl vagina. Me and few other friends were walking through the woods and this girl in front of me jumped on top of this tree trunk and fell back. I caught her by the waist and my hand somehow slid under her shirt and I somehow found myself awkwardly grabbing her boobs. We later dated for a year. The girl I was interested in at the time knocked on my suite door one morning. I had just woken up and was sporting a solid half chub of morning wood. Somehow thinking my pajama pants could hide this fact. I get up and open the door only to be greeted by a big hug from her. After a few seconds I felt my PP rub up against her leg. She didn't say anything but she knew. She had to. She left and I stood there mortified for a while. Didn't see much of her after that. Edit. The reason she stopped by was because she had been gone all weekend. This is at college BTW. She didn't leave as soon as my PP touched her. But didn't make a habit of staying much longer either. Here's my story. I was the fat kid in school and from time to time someone would grab my moobs and then I would grab theirs back. A playful girl grabbed mine and then I fricked up. Only 3 or 4 beers into a party. Walked into the kitchen and grabbed my girlfriend's ass with a decent amount of force. Only it wasn't my girlfriend. It was another 5 feet 6 inches brunette wearing denim shorts. Who at that very moment was in tears. Talking to her 2 friends about her boyfriend breaking up with her that day. So I am talking to my buddy in the hallway when he asks where the nearest bathroom was, so I, not looking, whipped my arm up and was going to point behind me. However, this chick was standing just to my left and got the full force of my backhand to her face. Needless to say, my pimp hand is strong. I was talking to a really attractive girl at a bar and my friends bumped enough to lose my balance and fall on her. My hands were in front of me and they ended up on her boobs. Luckily, she understood it was an accident and she actually bought me a drink cause I felt so bad. But I didn't go home with her though. Playing Marco Polo in the pool. I'm walking around the pool with my eyes closed and hands stretched out all Frankenstein-like. Hear a girl to my right. I turn. I know from her voice it's the girl with a massive rack. I've got her trapped in the corner. I know it. I reach for it. And I poked her in the eye as she tried to run away. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was waiting in a queue at a homeware shop with my dad and sister. I think I must have been distracted by something. Because for whatever reason, I didn't notice that my dad and sister left, as in, they got out of the queue to get something else. And then gone to the end. I just kept moving forward with the line. Thinking my dad was standing in front of me. I started leaning against him and hugging his arm and cuddling up to him. Like annoying kids do. It took my brain a couple seconds to register that he didn't smell like my dad. Suddenly, I looked up to see that the guy I was weirdly hanging on to was actually a 20-30 something year old with his wife girlfriend. He didn't say anything. Just looked at my bizarrely. I immediately got the hell out of the line and found my dad and sister who didn't even notice I hadn't been with them all along. I watched the couple walk out of the store. And noted that they were laughing hysterically once outside. I was so mortified about this. I wanted to die for weeks. TLDR, I tried to snuggle with a stranger while waiting in line at a shop. Sitting back to back with a friend. I'm a guy. She's a girl. I reached behind myself to try and give her a behind the back hug and I just grab a bunch of boob. She is a well endowed individual. So I grabbed a bunch. Later on she grabbed my crotch, so I'm not sure if she was 100% against me grabbing her boobs. There were some grades posted on a wall in 9th grade. And I was in the front of a large group looking at them. There was someone with 112% in a class. So I turned around and threw my hands up in the air in a "how the crap do you do that" gesture. The girl with 112% was right, being me. And I scooped her a royal one. Edit, spelling. I was backstage before a jazz band show and I was talking to a girl who decided to sit on my lap as we talked. Well, I started rocking a half chub because she was pretty cute. When she got up to leave, she stumbled and put her hand directly on my semi-erect PP and you could tell she knew what had just happened. She left it there a second or two before she pulled her hand away and gave me a look like, "Oh poop. I just grabbed your PP." It was pretty neat. Physical contact. A girl pointed a laser at my boner once. Was joking around with my friends, gesturing wildly, and accidentally hit a guy's ball sack. Then on top of that, as he straightens himself and I try to apologize to him, I then somehow magically proceed to smack him in the face. Yeah. So freaking awkward. Edit. Why? Yes. I was sorry. Of course. I forgot to mention. After smacking him in the face, we both look at each other awkwardly for a good 3 seconds. And then sorta half giggle embarrassingly and then we both walk off. Not the most awkward. but the most glazed into my mind at the moment. I was flirting with my crush. We have this game where we touch the ends of our pencils to the opposite's kneecap. Whoever at the end of the day did it last wins. Well, I was playing a game with her after a test. It was that one square game thing, and I nonchalantly decided to tap my eraser to her kneecap. I had the pointed side of my mechanical pencil facing her knee. Shit was razor sharp. Fricking grazed her leg with it. And I had that "oh poop, this isn't good" feel immediately. Awkward silence then broke out into a little yelp of pain and then blood. But I won that day, so I wore a color changing shirt based on body heat. It was dark gray to start and heat turned it white. Every guy at work wanted to see their handprint and proceeded to grab my shoulders and back for the effect. Went to come from behind and wrap my arms around my wife just to feel them against her tits. Also said, "Hey sexy" when doing so. Wasn't paying attention and did it to my mom instead. We played a game at a family party where you popped balloons on each other and whoever pops the most the fastest wins. I put the balloon on my partner's back. She was a cutie BTW. I hug her so I can pop it and it won't pop. I kept going back and forth so it would pop. Balloon ended up at her but caused gravity. Frick me and my competitive nature, I thrusted her 3 times hard while pulling her. It finally pops, but at this point it looked like I was trying to bang her. The families had a look of shock and I was embarrassed, but tried to act it off. An hour later I start talking to her and she gave the look. We made out throughout the night and other fun activities. Brushing my sister's hand while walking together. Fucking weird every time. And it's always my fault. Really short girl was walking in front of me and I didn't even see her. She stopped short and I basically humped her head. I was 18. Sitting next to the pool in my backyard. Parents are gone. Boyfriend is over. We are in the middle of an intense makeout session. Somehow his erect PP had managed to circumvent both our suits and begin the lightest of penetration. At first I thought he had done it on purpose. But the look of total shock that was on his face. He was like a cornered rabbit. He quickly pulled away and apologized profusely. And was hesitant to come within 3 feet of me for the rest of the night. Ended up marrying him. Won't ever let him live down that look of terror on his face. Standing on a train in Tokyo. First off, I'm white with light brown hair that curls up in loose ringlets after a certain length. My hair was exactly at this magic length at the time. Meaning I looked a bit like a bespectacled sheep. So I'm just minding my own business standing by a window reading a book when I feel something gently tugging at my scalp. Confused. I turn around. A grown-ass woman is bouncing one of my ringlets with this look on her face like she's just discovered the secret to eternal happiness. I glare. But she just looks at me. Blinks. Then plucks my hair again. I ask her to stop in English. She apparently can't hear me. I ask her to stop in Japanese. She goes wide-eyed in terror. Like many Japanese people do when white folks know their secret language. And scuttles back into the crowded compartment to hide behind some fat guy. I looked for her a few minutes later and she was still staring at me like I was a unicorn. Random Japanese train ladies, why you gotta be so racist? I guess this really isn't accidental. But it was awkward. And standing by that lady was certainly an accident. I was a teenager. Maybe 16 or so. And I was at this party, something that rarely happened, and I was flirting with this girl I had just met. Anyways. There was a water balloon fight and, being the competitive person I am, I take a running leap at her to throw a water balloon at her action movie style to show my superiority. She happened to be sitting down and not only did I throw the balloon directly at her face, I broke my landing by kneeing her directly in the vagina. She cried for hours and I decided to retreat to the living room and play Smash Brothers. I was in middle school at the time. We were in gym class and we were playing this game of tag where when you got touched you had to sit down and be seaweed. So I'm sitting there being the best damn seaweed I can be. A girl runs by me, I reach out and got an accidental handful of vaginal. It was the most awkward thing ever and she had to sit there until the game was over. I swear this game lasted 4 hours. While doing the I'm gonna grab your boobs pose for a picture, I accidentally grabbed them. Boner on a packed subway car. It was pressed right against her butt. Just kept whispering I'm so sorry into her ear. Back in high school when I was a freshman, I accidentally brushed a girl's ass as I was walking by her. She is adamant it was on purpose. Accuses me all class, so as we were leaving, I say, can I at least grab her ass if I'm being accused of it? She consented. We dated for a year after that. Then on and off for the next 4 or 5. Still best friends over a decade later. Meant to touch a girl on the shoulder specifically to avoid any chance of accidentally touching her chest. Well, it was pitch black out. We were in a big field at night with a group, and when I confidently grasped her shoulder, proud of my avoiding a potentially awkward situation so deftly, I vividly experienced the results of hubris. Her breasts were so large I could not distinguish them from her shoulders in the dark. I felt horrible. She laughed because she knew it was an accident. No harm done, beyond my feeling like an idiot for a very, very long time. We saw each other again randomly 10 years later. I brought it up again as a laugh. She remembered and it ended up being the conversational gateway to 3 days of hyperactive sex. So, I mean, in the end it worked out, but man, a solid decade of stupid. So today I was walking behind a girl, who then decides to stop abruptly, and I went pee first into her ass, in front of all her friends. She pretended to be offended, then quickly apologized and walked away. I should also say she said she was just kidding. REDDIT added more detail. Tripped going up the stairs and grabbed onto some girl's boobs with my left hand. Wasn't an unpleasant experience. I entered a race with a female friend, and it involved climbing over a wall. She said she wanted a boost over the top of the wall, but she didn't want me to look up because she had extremely short running shorts on. So that was awkward in 2 senses of the word. I was like, if this is seriously an issue for you, I think it's on you to wear underwear that can contain your vulva in such a situation. Once I was having relations with a girl who was quite large. I was drunk and told her to sit on my face. She broke my nose. A girl tripped and landed face first in my crotch. That wasn't even the most awkward part though, because after she landed my pee happened to get a little excited and it prodded her in the face while she was trying to get up. Turned beet red. But luckily she didn't say anything and just hurried away. My brother and I accidentally kissed it. You guys would hate the story, it's nothing much. My brother and I were having a moment and we hugged and we both went to kiss each other on the cheek, but we both missed and we kissed and we just looked at each other a moment and he said we never speak if this. Going to punch a friend jokingly. He dodges. Very ugly fat girl behind him takes the hit directly to her left tit. Awkward as frick. My professor and I turned around at exactly the same time and we bumped into each other, lips touched a little. It was cool though, she's one of the best looking teachers on campus. When I was drunk at my cousin's wedding reception and accidentally backhanded his best friend in the junk. But I was drunk, so it wasn't that awkward. He just said, "Who are," in this tone of voice that implied, "Oh look, a surprise." Flailing drunk teenage girl's hand on my junk. I didn't like it, but I didn't hate it. Dart. I teach biology at a community college and need to get close to students to show them details during lab. Often other students will look over my shoulder when I'm pointing out hard to find things. At least once I remember drawing my hand back so a student can point at the structure and I forcefully elbowed a girl standing behind me in her firm yet soft, yielding breast. I froze for a second. I said, Sorry. Over my shoulder. I was at a high school pool party once and this DK bag guy was trying to pull the backstring on girls' bikinis. I was hanging out with my buds in the pool and out of nowhere he got lucky and finally got one of the girls' tops off. She screamed and ran towards me as I guess I was the first person she saw and hugged me as to cover her boobs up. So I just stood there hugging her with her boobs squished into my chest as someone else got her bikini top. Once said article of clothing was retrieved we had to shimmy over to the side of the pool where she could wrap up in a yell while she put her top back on. Meanwhile I got my first up close look at boobs and had a raging boner going. Later that night she wanted to thank me and we have sex. So on one day I saw my first real pair of boobs. Lost my VCAD. And met my future wife. What a weird day that was. That was in 2007 while I was still in high school. We went to college together. Graduated college together and have been married now for several years. It still amazes me sometimes. During swing dancing it happens every now and then that the guy touches the girl's boobs. Small accidental titty grabs. No big deal. Just laugh it off or whatever. So I was dancing swing with this girl. And I was trying to do a new move I had just learned. Which involved grabbing her hip and rotating her around. To my surprise, the girl hadn't turned far enough around when I went for the hip. Titty grabs can be laughed off. I learned that day that the same is not true for clitty grabs.